So welcome everybody to our afternoon bell session. It's 3 o'clock, little past 3 on Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday. We've all lost track of time, I think, a little bit. Which day of the week is it? What time is it? But you are tuning into the Bureau of Student Wellness's 3 p.m. afternoon bell session today. Our topic is how can educators keep students safe? Just a reminder, if you haven't tuned in to any of our live sessions yet, we do these every day, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at 3 p.m. And we also have morning coffee chats at 9 a.m. with some of my colleagues from the Bureau. Very similar format, just us live streaming, talking to you about the topics that we are hearing are of interest to you during this time of remote learning. We also have a department-wide website with lots of supports at nhlearnsremotely.com. And you can follow us on our social media channels, NH Student Wellness on Facebook and on YouTube, and at NH Schools on Twitter. I want to invite all of you to leave comments, feedback, questions in the chat today. And that will also go for those who are not watching this live. Feel free to leave questions and comments in the chat, and we will make sure that we answer them. Jennifer and Amy Jo are our guests today. I'm going to introduce them in just a second, but they are happy to field questions during the presentation. So if something comes up and you want to ask a direct question, I'll be monitoring the chat and we'll weave it into our session this afternoon. So without further ado, I want to introduce our two guests this afternoon as part of our speaker series. We have Jennifer Tveter. She's the Coalition's prevention coordinator. In this role, she coordinates the New Hampshire Rape Prevention Education Project, supports the Crisis Center prevention efforts, and co-chairs the New Hampshire Sexual Violence Prevention Advisory Committee. Through her work with SVPAC, do you guys say SVPAC?
We just mentioned the letters.
Awesome. Jennifer builds partnerships with stakeholders to provide statewide trainings to school staff on mandated reporting and sexual violence prevention. And prior to joining the coalition, Jennifer has been greatly involved in the national anti-domestic violence movement and has worked in various roles, including local crisis and prevention centers, domestic violence shelters, and law offices, which represent domestic violence victims in matrimonial and custody cases. So welcome to Jennifer Tveter. We also have Amy Jo Muscott. Amy Jo is currently the education coordinator at Bridges, the domestic and sexual violence support in Nashua. She received her MEd in school counseling from Revere College, now University, and spent several years as an elementary school counselor throughout New Hampshire. She's dedicated to the mental health of children and adults and continues to teach concrete coping skills and strategies. In her position as education coordinator, she works preventatively in schools and in organizations, presenting on bullying, healthy relationships, consent, teen dating violence, issues related to sexual assault, how to be trauma-informed, and warning signs for students and adults. At Bridges, she's done individual advocacy with survivors, facilitated groups for survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence, as well as with children and their parents who have witnessed domestic violence. Bridges in Nashua is one of 13 crisis centers in New Hampshire and is part of the New Hampshire Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. Amy Jo joined the Bridges staff 6 years ago after her involvement as a volunteer for over 2 years. So welcome to you both, ladies. Thank you for taking the time this afternoon to share some tips and tricks, some things that we should be on the lookout for during this time of remote learning to keep our kiddos safe. I'm going to turn it over to you, and folks who are watching at home, please weigh in if you've got questions or comments.
Okay, so we're really happy to be here today, and again, if you have any questions, let us know. But we're hoping that this answers a lot of the questions that have been coming up for you as you've been working with students remotely. So let's just first, whoops, why is this not working? Ooh, there we go. Okay, so I just want to talk about the objectives that we're going to cover today. I'm hoping that we can explore the challenges of COVID-19, remote learning, and its impact on students and families. I know that we all have safety concerns with students, and so I'm hoping that we can have some conversation about that. We're also going to be talking about possible warning signs and concerns. And also, we hope that we can expand skills together to connect with students, observe behavior remotely, and increase protective strategies. Okay, because I think that we're all on a learning curve right now, and I think it's really important that we do what we can to be the best protectors or protective factors for students. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about where we are now. This happened really suddenly. We had to figure out very quickly not only how to change the way we were teaching students, but also ways that we could connect with our students. And we had a very familiar way of dealing with them, interacting with them, supporting them, teaching them. And now we really have had to make a major shift. And it's not only a shift for us that we can control, but it's also a shift for them that's really out of our control. And so part of what I want to talk about today is really the things that we can do and the things that we know and the things that may be more challenging. So, and Jennifer, if you have anything to add, just please do that. Okay, and so just again, this just is what we know, right? That we're now social distancing, we're working from home. We have the normal and the specific challenges with this transition. And also there are things that you need as educators to support your students. And I'm hoping that we can have a conversation about that to figure out things that maybe you think you need that you're not getting, and ways that maybe your supports can help you. And also as crisis centers or as the coalition, we can help support or direct you to resources that would be helpful. So the first question that I really wanted to ask each of you as educators is, how are you feeling? Because I know for me, I'm feeling kind of anxious, and I'm feeling almost like I'm walking in high heels that are too high. Which is not really a forte of mine anyway. But this is really putting us all kind of off center, and it's really important that you try to tune in to what you need and what you need to do to take care of yourself. And also remember that your body is giving you lots of messages. So if you're starting to feel anxious, and if you're starting to feel discouraged or frustrated, just be aware of that so that you can think about ways that you can possibly help yourself or reach out to others, which a lot of us are doing now, whether it's in this kind of format or FaceTime or phone calling or whatever, right? So just think about what you need. And I really want you to think about, or we want you to think about, noticing changes in yourself, listening really closely to what you need, remembering that your body sensations are messengers, and really to trust your gut about yourself and others, including your students. And this is something that we talk to students when we go out and present, to talk about relationships and talk about boundaries. We often always talk to our students about trusting their gut, trusting themselves. If you're talking to somebody and you're starting to feel that yucky feeling, listen to it, because it's probably telling you something that you should be paying attention to. So again, I just want you to be thinking about that during this conversation.
And another thing to add, especially for educators, is we understand that generally there is already pre-COVID-19 an intense pressure on educators, where expecting you to be able to do everything. We expect you to be able to handle the academic curriculum as well as all of the social emotional components of students' needs. And especially with then the switch to remote learning and having to adjust everything and wear 10 different hats, that's a lot. And you are not expected to be a superhero. And that's why we're doing this, to try to help you out with some of the things that are on your task upon you on your to-do list of watching out for your students, because we know you care about them greatly. But this is new for all of us, and it's okay for it to be messy. It's okay for it to not be perfect, and really allow yourself to not have to meet those perfectionistic standards that sometimes are put upon you from the outside, or that we ourselves might put upon ourselves.
And I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. So thank you for sharing that, Jennifer. So I wanted to do a little bit of an icebreaker, and it'll take probably about 20 seconds. But what I'd like everyone to do, if it's okay, is just to cross your arms as you're sitting where you're sitting. I'm doing it. And I just want you to think for a minute about how that feels, right? It feels familiar, probably, because you've probably done it in the past. But what I now want you to do is to try to cross your arms the other way, whatever that means for you. And how does that feel? Ellen, how does that feel?
I feel like you're my yoga teacher.
Oh,
I can't even do it.
You can't even do it. It's hard. And so, exactly correct. And so the reason that I wanted you to think about that, or actually start this conversation this way, because it's very, very important to know that there are some things that are really familiar, but change and shifting is hard. It is hard for each of us. And so I just wanted to take a couple seconds to do that, okay? All right, well, thank you for bearing with me. All right. So these are big changes, though. These are bigger than crossing your arms. And when we experience all of these different changes, it's really overwhelming. And so what I want each of us to think about is that there have been some very positive changes that have come up because of this change for all of us. What are some of the positive things that have come up? Has anyone added anything in the chat, Ellen? No? But just in terms of kind of what we're all learning. And then there's things that are really, really challenging. But what I'm inviting you to do is to think about framing this experience with both positive feedback, positive things that have happened, and some things that might be more challenging. But it's important to see both the yin and the yang, right? So I do want you to be thinking about that. And so again, this is just an opportunity or a visual to have you think about things that are positive and things that are more challenging, because we're really trying to reframe our thinking in many ways. So this is a 5-minute video, and Ellen, you're going to help us with that, right? But I hope you enjoy it.
When we face a crisis of any sort, fear and anxiety are inevitable. They are normal, natural responses to any challenging situation infused with danger and uncertainty. Face COVID is a set of practical steps for dealing with such situations. F is for focus on what's in your control. You can't control what happens in the future. You can't control coronavirus itself or the world economy or what other people do, and you can't magically control your thoughts and feelings. Fear, anxiety, and worry are inevitable, but you can control what you do here and now. So let's focus on that. A is for acknowledge your thoughts and feelings. Silently and kindly acknowledge whatever is showing up inside you, thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, sensations, urges. With curiosity, notice what's going on in your inner world. You might say to yourself, I am noticing feelings of anxiety, or I'm having thoughts about getting sick, or I'm having feelings of loneliness. And as you continue acknowledging your thoughts and feelings, bring in the next step, which is C, come back into your body. Find your own way of connecting with your physical body. For example, you might try slowly pressing your feet hard into the floor, or slowly pressing your fingertips together, slowly stretching your arms or your neck, or shrugging your shoulders, or slowly breathing. And as you acknowledge your thoughts and feelings and come back into your body, you then move to E, which is for engage in what you're doing. Get a sense of where you are here and now and refocus your attention on the activity at hand. Notice 5 things you can see, 5 things you can hear. Notice what you can touch and taste and smell. Notice what you are doing and give your full attention to that activity. And then C is for committed action. This means effective action guided by your core values. Action you take because it's important to you, even if it brings up difficult thoughts and feelings. Of course, this includes following official guidelines on what to do during this crisis. But in addition, ask yourself regularly, what can I do right now, no matter how small it may be, that improves life for myself or others I live with or people in my community? And whatever the answer is, do it and engage in it fully. O is for opening up. This means making room for difficult feelings and being kind to yourself. As this crisis unfolds, we'll all feel fear, anxiety, anger, sadness, guilt, loneliness, and so on. We can't stop these painful feelings from arising, but we can open up and make room for them. Acknowledge they are normal, allow them to be there even though they hurt, and treat ourselves kindly. Consider what are kind words you can say to yourself and kind things you can do for yourself to help you cope with this suffering. V is for values. Committed action should be guided by your core values. What do you want to stand for in the face of this crisis? What sort of person do you want to be as you go through this? How do you want to treat yourself and others? Your values might include love, respect, humor, patience, courage, honesty, caring, openness, kindness, compassion, or numerous others. Look for ways to sprinkle your values into your day and let them guide and motivate your actions. I is for identify resources. Identify resources for help, assistance, support, and advice. This includes friends, family, neighbors, health professionals, and emergency services. Make sure you know the emergency helpline phone numbers, including those for psychological help if required. D is for disinfect and distance. Remember to disinfect regularly and practice physical distancing for the greater good of your community. Please run through the steps of Face COVID as often as you can for the benefit of yourself, your loved ones, and all the people in your community.
Great. So we will, I'll share that link with folks. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I love that.
So this actually just kind of focuses on what those points were. And I think that there's a lot of really important information. I actually have been sharing this with some high school students and they have found it really, really helpful. And the other thing I just want to remind you of is that identifying resources is really important, and Bridges and the crisis centers in New Hampshire and the coalition are all resources that are available to you, and also to help direct you to other resources when you need assistance. So that's why I just think it's really important. Okay, go ahead.
And one of the things that I'd also like to highlight is, especially for the F, for the focus on and ask what's in your control. Right now, for many students, they have a complete loss of control. Everything that was their daily routine that they prepared for and lived their life by is not happening anymore. And for some students, that was their lifeline. So really being mindful that while we might feel a sense of loss of control, for children that can be increased, or that it might be an even larger loss.
Absolutely. And it's also, I mean, that a lot of children find school as their safest place. Really, really important to remember. Okay. Go ahead. All right. So, you know, we talk a lot about risk factors when we talk about trauma. We talk about, you know, adverse child experiences. But what's really, really important is that protective factors are really, really important. And so I just wanted to talk to you about protective factors because they contribute to mental health and they allow a person or a student to be resilient in the face of change and challenges. Someone with a lot of protective factors, such as strong relationships and healthy coping skills, will be better equipped to overcome life's obstacles. And as an educator, you are a very important protective factor for your students. And as educators that support you, the educators through the crisis centers and the coalition do a lot of prevention, and a lot of what we talk about is relationships, healthy coping skills, and strategies. That's a lot of what we help our students with. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, and another thing with what the protective factors are is community connectedness is a really large protective factor. And with this isolation or social distancing or whatever level of that people are practicing, there is a decrease in community connectedness, and people may be finding themselves to be more isolated than they can handle, or than that would actually be decreasing their protective factors. So we want to make sure that we are trying our best to reach out to those who are in need, even if that doesn't necessarily need to look like severe violence, but just recognizing that reaching out and being there for people, that already in and of itself can be a mitigating factor and can help people to decrease the stress levels, show them that you care, as well as let other people know that you're watching so that it can hopefully intervene in some of the escalation of possible violence.
And I think that sometimes we don't realize how powerful reaching out, even in little ways, to people, how much it really means. And I know that I was speaking to someone a few months ago who was telling me that they were walking down the street and they saw someone and smiled at this person, and the person started to cry because it was someone who felt disenfranchised and all of a sudden really felt a feeling of belonging. There's so much that we can do to share belonging with our students and with our communities. And you can do that. We all can do that. So as a protective factor, you are very, very important. And Dr. Perry is someone that I really love to talk about and read. But one of his quotes is, "The more healthy relationships a child has, the more likely he will be to recover from trauma and thrive," or he or she. Relationships are the agents of change, and the most powerful therapy is human love. And so I just want you again to think about the power that you have in connecting to your colleagues, connecting to the people in your support system, and also connecting with your students. Okay,
And especially those students who may be a little bit harder to connect with, or who may have those labels that seem a little bit more negative, like attention seeking. Those behaviors are really ways to try to connect with people, even if they're in a negative form. So please don't disregard students who are harder or have more difficult behaviors, because it's actually those behaviors are a warning sign that they need that extra connection. Also, students or children in general, we know, can take on behaviors from their toxic environments. So also another warning sign that those students might be in unsafe situations if they're taking on those behaviors. It's kind of like the idea of a goldfish in a shark's fin, or in a shark's dress up outfit. It's a silly analogy, but they're still little children. And even if they're behaving in ways that seem unbecoming, those are masking their vulnerabilities. So please try not to be deterred by that. It's those students who may even need the most help. Or also not to forget those who are perfectionistic and try to think that by maybe being perfect, they are able to control their environment too. So we also don't want to forget those who are quiet perhaps, but just be aware that a response to trauma can come in different shapes and forms. So be on the lookout and make sure that we're reaching out to each and every student, which I know is a big task. So
It is. No,
you don't take it lightly.
It is. It is a big task, but you're absolutely correct. One of the things I know that's been really concerning, particularly at this challenging time, is reporting. And so just so you know, child abuse and neglect rates increase usually when there is crisis or economic instability. And if we were to describe this time right now, I think that we would describe this as definitely a time of crisis and economic instability. But what's happened is that the reports of child abuse and neglect have declined in the last few weeks. And part of that is that educators are the people that often report. They're the ones that are very much in tune and connected to students. And so without that connection daily, it's been very, very different. And so part of what we're going to be talking about today is some ways that you can possibly be a super sleuth, right? A little bit of a super sleuth to kind of connect with students in a way that you can observe potential issues or potential things that need to be addressed or reported.
And while looking for signs, keep a log, even if it might not seem like something that raises a report. Keep a log of things that you find concerning, because especially right now, DCYF is trying to practice social distancing as well, while making sure that they're ensuring the safety of our children throughout the state of New Hampshire. So in order to go out to a home, they need to justify why there is that severity. So just by keeping a log of a child you have a concern about, that could help DCYF being able to make a case to go out and make a visit.
Yep. And you often know who those children are. I mean, because enough of the school year has gone by that you know the ones that you're thinking about or that you're more concerned about. And again, you know, our communication looks very different right now. And we all know that many students, or not all students, are safe at home. And we're just reminding you that you are mandated by law to report suspicions of child abuse and neglect. And so we want to make sure that that's something that you remember as you're trying to do all the other things that you're doing, starting at early each morning. So we just do want you to be thinking about that. Okay.
And it's a concern or suspicion of child abuse or neglect. You do not need to know. And the Department for Children, Youth, and Families will be doing the investigation. So you don't need to go trying to get more information. Just log what you already have. Try to be as detailed as possible in the information that you do know, but don't go trying to investigate yourself. That's the job of DCYF. So any suspicions, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have proof, but just any concerns, If it is unfounded, then nothing will happen with it, and it doesn't make things worse. So please make sure that you are reaching out, and multiple times too. Just because you call once, if something else happens or if there's another incident that raises your concern, call DCYF again to notify them about it, because that does compound the situation and the information that they have, and affects the way in which they'll do their investigation. And it's the person, just a quick reminder, it is the person who any person who has that information must make the phone call themselves to DCYF. Think of it as paint that spreads. So if I have a concern about a student and then I tell Amy Jo now also has paint on her. And it's both of our responsibilities to make sure that DCYF is notified.
Absolutely. And I think it's also pretty difficult now just because things feel so different, but it's really important to remember that reporting responsibilities and procedures remain, whether we're working remotely or we're in a school. And DCYF has a really great fact sheet. And so I put the link, just the naked link there, just so you could see it and check in with it. But it's a great resource. There also are other resources at the end of the presentation that I think will be also helpful to you. But that particular one I thought was really awesome.
Yeah, and a mention for Granite State Children's Alliance, who run the No and Tell campaign. Questions about mandatory reporting. They also have online training modules for when to report. So that's another great resource.
And that definitely is included at the end of the presentation, because No and Tell and the Granite State Children's Alliance were resources that I use all the time. So anyway, but yes, there's a lot of great fact sheets and information that they've created at this time as well. Okay. So I think it's also really important to remember that we all have a collective responsibility, right? To work together. The spreading of the paint, like Jennifer was saying, to make sure that kids are healthy, safe, and thriving, which is more challenging for us, but these times are very, very challenging. And parents and caregivers can be a child's most important protective factor, right, or protectors. But they also may need extra support. And I also want to remind you that DCYF is really works hard to make sure that families get the kind of support that they need, if indeed that's what's needed to keep a child safe. So I just want you to remember that that DCYF is a resource as well. Okay.
And most parents, or most people in general, don't go out with the intention to cause harm. I think the majority of people believe that they are good people and try to be good people, but under extenuating circumstances and with increased stress, we all may find ourselves acting not in our best step ahead. So just think about those who may be struggling a little bit extra. If we can reach out and alleviate some of that stress, we may be able to protect children and help keep families intact, because sometimes it can just be a little bit harder with certain circumstances. So,
and I also think that, we have to really think about what we can do for parents right now. I mean, parents are not used to being teachers and having their children home all the time and having the kinds of tasks that are on their plate, that we really have to do whatever we can to connect with them as well and know that they're supported by us. So it's really important to check in regularly with students and caregivers and to provide encouraging messages and to engage children. You could even ask this to parents as well. Give me one word that describes how you feel today. How is learning from home different from learning at school? How is having your children home different than having your children at school, right? I mean, there's a lot of challenges, whether it be the technology that they're now dealing with, the amount of assignments and websites and things that they're expected to do with their children. There's a lot that's being now placed on parents. Were you going to say something, Jen, or not? No? Okay.
Nope.
So it's important to remind caregivers that you are there to help and not judge them. I think that many parents feel that they are constantly being judged, particularly if they're in a situation and have children that that do have those labels that Jennifer was talking about, you know, that do have learning concerns or do have behavioral concerns. They are constantly feeling like they're being judged. And so it's really important that you consider how you can follow up with a caregiver and validate that this is really a difficult time and that everyone is struggling and that support is still available and resources are available. So just remember that we're all in this together.
And not only the parents feel judged, we understand that teachers oftentimes are judged very harshly as well while you're trying to balance everything. And so make sure that you are there to support each other during this time too, as we are here to support you as well.
Yep, absolutely. And so some questions that you could ask parents: is it a good time to talk? If not, is there a better time? Now is a difficult, stressful time for everyone. How are you? Are you okay and safe? We all need support right now. Who are your supports and how, you know, can you connect with them or how are you connecting with them? So again, whatever you can do. Since the COVID-19 emergency started, what has changed in your family? Has anything been more of a struggle? Are you facing new worries or needs? And is everyone in your family able to get what they need to get by, whether it's food or housing or safety or education or health or internet? I mean, there's a lot of things that families probably are not getting right now. And just having someone ask and offer to direct them is a gift. So just remember that.
And it doesn't need to be that you're offering to fix it for them, but sometimes, especially when we are in a place of trauma, just even having someone give us the resource or give us the direct phone number to call can make all the difference as to whether or not we're going to be willing and able to reach out to that resource. So sometimes we might think, oh, someone can just Google it. They can find that information. It can be really challenging depending on how many balls you're juggling at once to be able to find that information. And when our brains are activated and we're having a trauma response, we might not be able to process that information as well as we normally would be able to. It can affect our cognitive ability. So something that seems small might actually be making a huge difference for another person. So you don't need to take on the whole idea of having to fix everything for them, but a phone number, a name, just a soft handoff, those can make a huge difference for people.
Absolutely. And so for students with technology and internet access, these are things that could be really, really concerning. Maybe a student isn't checking in, or their homework isn't completed over a long period of time. And we were actually, Jennifer and I were talking earlier about the fact that we're also very, very concerned about families that do not have that don't have internet access, because so much of what they're expected to do right now involves internet access. And I know that a lot of school districts have worked really hard to make sure that kids can access that. But if you're in a situation where you're having no contact at all with a family after repeated phone messages or calls, or you're not seeing your students virtually attending, you know, classes that are going on, these are things that really are concerning. And if a child also communicates that they feel unsafe, or that you see a child in a dangerous environment or notice a significant change in a child's mood and behavior, these are things really that you should pay attention to, because they may be telling you something that's incredibly important.
If I could just jump in for a second, I was on a call and would love to share a suggestion. And maybe you can direct a little bit too about in terms of the period of time, you know, teachers should really be aware of. If it, you know, 3 days has gone by and you haven't heard from a student, is that kind of a good marker, or longer, or, you know, shorter? Do you have a sense of?
Well, do you want to answer that? I mean,
Well, I think it really varies per family. I think we need to understand that every family situation is different and unique, and parents are struggling with work as well as managing homeschooling. So balancing it out from what you know for that family, because you are the expert in your community, you are the expert when it comes to the children in your classroom. Really, as Amy Jo mentioned before, trust your gut. So for one student, you know maybe that it's a single mom juggling 4 kids and a job, and their schoolwork's sporadic, but you know they kind of get around to it and you connect with them maybe once a week or once every other week to make sure that they're okay and still above water. For a different family, it may be that, you know, there is the ability for connection, but they're not doing it because of other reasons. You've always kind of had a bit of that icky feeling when it comes to the family dynamics there, and you might want to check in earlier and cautiously. So trust your gut on that. Be aware of the family dynamics, and that for each independent family unit, there will be different needs and concerns. So trauma doesn't look the same for everybody. And we need to handle the different family dynamics as you
Sure. And I imagine that there are better people within the school community to reach out than others necessarily. And that's kind of where the suggestion piece of my interjection came from, that there are a number of schools I know that have spent some time designating, you know, different teams of people to reach out to certain families. And that creates that consistent relationship. And it's just coordinated. So there aren't 6 different educators reaching out to the same family any given day. And it just requires that internal communication and helps the family feel supported, but not overwhelmed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I forget what it's called, but there's a technique that schools are using where they'll take each student's picture and go around and make sure who is the person who has that connection with that student. And you know, that might switch during certain times, especially right now. You might have somebody else reach out than you would normally within the school setting. So think about who might be that best connection, as well as making sure that each student is being monitored extra by somebody within that room, as well as maybe you've had an educator reach out a whole bunch of times to that family and they haven't heard anything. But maybe if you step it up a bit and have the vice principal reach out, maybe they'll respond to that person then. The different sense of urgency, depending on the title that individual was holding, could make a difference.
Thank you.
And also, depending on who they really have that strong alliance or relationship with. I mean, that relationship building is really what we've been talking about, whether it be in terms of ACEs or whether what we've been talking about in terms of good social emotional learning, that it's really important that all of us feel belonging, and that all of us feel that we have a connection to someone who respects us and who cares about us. So.
And while one teacher may feel like they have a really good relationship with the family, or that they're the best person to reach out, maybe for the family they're feeling fearful that they're getting in trouble for not completing schoolwork, or they're nervous about that. So that's why also trying to switch up who reaches out could be a different solution.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, Ellen? Yeah. Okay. And I also just want to reiterate again that, you know, there's certain kids that we're extra concerned about, right? Those are ones that have a history of emotional, sexual, physical abuse, neglect, where there's been possible substance use, or they've talked about, you know, suicide ideation. These are all things that are really, really important. Maybe they're responsible for the care of other children and live in really highly stressful family situations with limited supports. And again, you know probably who these students are. but these are ones that you want to pay special attention to. Requiring assistance due to physical, mental, behavioral, or medical disabilities or delays. So again, students that have concerns, whether it be learning concerns or any kind of disability, those are the ones that may be on our radar, but we know we know the students that are on our radar. Go ahead.
And that could be, those are also additional stressors for the parents, right? If they have students who have extra special needs. And also another group that I wanted to mention is foster children as well. So especially, we know that there can be risks in certain foster homes. So we just want to make sure that we're looking out for that, especially with students who have a past trauma already.
Absolutely. So just some questions for children. So that's, yep. And so just to reassure them and validate them, and, you know, maybe sending some positive notes through email or even by mail. And to acknowledge that this is a new way of learning for everybody. Make sure that you're complimenting them on completed work, and that you're citing specific pieces of work to help motivate them. But also it's important that you share that you've been missing them, and that there's things that have helped you during this time. And I think it's really important to normalize that piece. And so a routine check-in, how are you feeling? How can I help you? How is your night? Who is home to help you with learning today? How are you doing with our new way of learning? What has been working well and not so well? What fun things do you have planned? And what else would you like to share? So again, doing it in a way that feels very relatable and very connected is important.
And I also especially love the who is there to help you with learning, or who else is in your home today. Thinking that there may be different families blending right now because of the quarantine. So an uncle might be home, or a boyfriend might be staying with them when it's not usually the case. So just being aware of who's in that home, that's maybe not generally in that home. So we have an idea of who those kids are exposed to. And thinking about it as we all may be feeling a certain amount of grief, of loss for our normal lives, and that children can feel that too. And so sharing that situation and those emotions is, and healthy coping skills can be a really good way of modeling how to handle the situation. Just a nice little fun thing that my school did for my kids, or for all the kids, they did a teacher car parade, which just was such a morale booster. I mean, they loved it. The teacher said that they missed them and were screaming and waving at the kids, and it just made the kids feel so appreciated and valued, and it was fun and silly and just a wonderful moment. So while we're talking about really serious things that we're trying to prevent, it doesn't have to always be with a heavy heart that we're going into this. This can be a fun way to connect, make sure that people feel loved and connected, and that we're still allowed to be goofy and silly, and yeah, that it doesn't have to be as heavy as the consequences can be, of course. And oh, there was one more thing that I was going to say, and it escaped me, but it will come back.
I appreciate you mentioning all of these things, right? We're coming from this space of prevention and this space of protective factors. And of course, we want to mitigate those risk factors that are involved. But really what you're speaking to is the best of prevention. It's having relationships with young people and their families and knowing them well enough so you have that bond that you can reach out and, you can be real and you can be vulnerable with them, within ethical and professional boundaries. But getting to know them in this place where you can help them meet the needs that that are lacking right now, potentially, because you know what supports they need, and that's a huge part of our work, and that's why we like working with all of you, because it really is protective factor focused and driven.
And I did recall the other thing that I was going to discuss. As Amy Jo mentioned, mentioning to the students that you miss them is really important. I think that unfortunately, many students are hearing right now that their parents are feeling frustrated with the workload, frustrated with having to homeschool them, frustrated that the kids are always around them. And that can really make anybody feel unworthy or devalued. And that can lead to a lot of internalized problems, as well as we're seeing an increase of suicidality or suicidal ideation. So we want to make sure that even if they're not being appreciated at home, that they know that there is someone out there who is excited to see them, excited to be with them, and can't wait to be able to spend their day with them. I would hope that all students are hearing that message at home, that it's, while challenging, an extra blessing to be able to spend time with your kids. You know, as chaotic as it can be. I'm hiding in my bedroom right now so I can do this Zoom call, but not all families have that ability or have that, not all students are getting that message. So just something like that, that excitement, that seeing somebody's face light up when they see you can make you feel special, or be that one thing that keeps you holding on, like, okay, I'll be back in my teacher's class soon.
Yep. And I think that's also why, you know, it's important to ask about what is the best part of their day. What is something that has really been special? Maybe, you know, have you baked anything? Have you cooked anything? Have you made anything? Have you, you know, have you been drawing? Have you been writing? Whatever it is that really is, speaks to that particular student. So I think it's really, really important. Thank you. Okay, and so, you know, again, I wanted just to think about this in terms of digging a little bit deeper. How's your family? Is there anything that your family needs? I know that you're friends with a certain child. Have you been able to keep in touch with them? Have you been able to talk to other family members or friends, and how are they doing? How are you sleeping? And then this is really important too. What are the rules in your house? What happens when someone breaks a rule? And how is everyone getting along? Is anyone having a hard time or worried? So again, you know, these are things, again, just to keep in mind when you're having conversations, if you're concerned particularly.
And another way to try to get these questions answered is for your writing projects. We know that students need to continue on their writing. Have them journal. What's different in your life since we've been doing remote learning, or how are you feeling, or how is your family acting differently since COVID-19? You know, there could be some silliness in there. You know, we are doing school in our pajamas and that's fun, but you might also be able to catch a glimpse of some things that might be a little concerning, while being able to tie it into some of that academic work you need to do. So we're trying not to add extra work to what you're doing, but if we can find ways to blend it, finding good stories that might be able to kind of line up with some of these things, such as How Are You Peeling? It's a fruit book about emotions, or Hands Off Harry, right? There's a lot of great resources out there.
And again, this is more of kind of the same kind of thing, but, you know, about a typical day. And also to remember that you can always ask open-ended questions. And that's a way to really engage more conversation, particularly if you're more concerned, but also just if you want to engage more with students.
And the way this happens, I mean, I know that some schools are doing, or some classrooms are doing classroom Zoom calls. Others are doing checking in independently with one-on-one Zoom calls, especially for children, I think, who have more special needs. So there's different ways to try to connect and get this information in different forms from the child, from the caregivers. And once you put that information together, hopefully we'll get a bigger picture of what's happening within that household, especially if stories aren't lining up. If the child is saying they ate something differently than the parent is saying, maybe there's some inconsistencies there to look into.
Yep, and I think that, you know, we know, and Ellen, you know from your work with mental health first aid, that everybody, all of us usually have a little piece of the puzzle, right? We don't always know everything about every student and every family. And so we have to be a little more creative in terms of kind of listening to what some of those needs might be. So it's just something to think about. And so again, just some observations and responses. I've noticed that you've shared that you've been struggling. How can I help? I'm having a hard time hearing you due to the background noise. I'm hearing some other noises in the background. What's happening at your house today? I saw an older person or younger person walk by your screen. Who's home with you today? But again, just checking in. And so we're hoping, and I'm hoping that you have some questions or insights to add to this conversation, but is we all have a collective responsibility, and it's really important to take care of yourself. You are an important protective factor, and you can gather information remotely, but most of all, stay connected and utilize, if you can, national community resources, and local crisis centers or the coalition can definitely help you with that. But just remember that this is really a challenging time for everybody.
And we appreciate all that you do. We know that you are going above and beyond just for the educational piece alone, and then adding all that you're doing to make sure that the kiddos at home are staying safe and fed and healthy is just remarkable. So just a quick little overview of what the coalition does. So we are the New Hampshire Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, the umbrella organization over a network of 13 member programs, which are the local crisis centers. Bridges is one of them, and they're spread throughout the state, and we have amazing advocates who are really doing incredible work and continuing to do incredible work even during this challenging time. So our mission is to influence public policy on the local, state, and national levels. We ensure the quality services are provided to victims, promote the accountability of societal systems and communities for their responses to sexual violence, domestic violence, and stalking, and prevent violence and abuse before they occur, which is my main role. So those are the general caps that we do. This is a catchment map. So we have the 13 crisis centers that are spread throughout the state. You can call the state sexual assault hotline or the domestic violence hotline. And then when you call through, there will be a prompt to figure out where you are, and it will connect you through to your local crisis center. Also on this catchment map are all of the crisis centers, so you can go and try to figure out which one is closest to you and then reach out to them as well. If you have any questions, aren't sure who to call, you can always reach out to the coalition, myself, or any of the crisis centers, and an advocate will be happy to help you, even if you're not in their catchment area, and they'll connect you to the proper resources. So please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach out to anybody and we will help get you connected to the correct people. That goes for you as educators or for families. Anybody can reach out and we will do our best to make sure that we get you the proper resources. Even if somebody reaches out to us for another need, such as mandated reporting, that's okay. We'll talk you through it and we'll get you connected to the proper number. So also our crisis center advocates are happy to speak with somebody if they have concerns about mandated reporting or don't know if they should or shouldn't be calling. Give an advocate a call. It's 24/7 hotline number. You can always reach somebody and you don't have to figure this out on your own. Also, the crisis hotlines, it's not just for people in crisis. We also provide services for people who are secondary victims of trauma or who are trying to help and reach out to other people. And you can also call, sorry, I'm just going on my huge little.
That's okay, you're doing good.
We also, our crisis centers offer prevention programming. And so while that might look very different right now, you can still reach out if you would like to connect with a prevention educator and see how you can bring prevention programming to your school. While it will be different maybe, or look a little bit different or seem different than the way that it is usually implemented, we are happy to try to be innovative and creative of how we can bring this to you and your community. And it actually is a great time to be bringing this into the homes of individuals who may be needing some extra help. So by talking about prevention, by talking about this in an educational format, we might actually be able to reach out to people and help them access proper resources to get help as well. So it has a twofold function, and please, distribute this information, share our contact information with your whole community. And that's an extra way to also be able to reach out to somebody who may be in need. If somebody is isolated with an abusive partner and unable to leave, always in the home at the same time, we want to be careful with how we reach out. But if we're sharing information to the entire school community, we're not singling out that individual. So if there's somebody that you're concerned about, thinking, oh, they really need this information, I don't know how to get it to them, send it to everybody. Everyone can see this multiple times. They might not need it. They might actually, it might be great for them to see it a second time because they might be concerned about a neighbor. And you can still get it to those people who you're trying to connect with resources without having to single them out and potentially risk their abusive partner or parent seeing the information.
Absolutely. And we are, all the prevention educators throughout the state have been doing a lot in terms of prevention remotely. So we have been working on programming that really, we actually start with preschool all the way up to adults. So we have lots of different ways that we can support you and do prevention. So do you want to talk? Go ahead. You can do this. Yep. Go ahead.
The services that our crisis centers are providing may look differently at this time. We are, of course, practicing social distancing when possible. But the crisis centers are still offering support services. So the 24/7 crisis hotline is still there. As I mentioned before, you do not need to be directly impacted in order to call. Services are still available, from safety planning through accessing safe shelter. Courts remain open, for emergencies, including domestic violence protective orders and ex parte motions for child abuse. And actually, I just wanted to go over a little bit more about that. So protective orders that are scheduled to end during the period of the governor's stay-at-home order, they will remain in place until the stay-at-home order is over. So in case anybody has concerns about that, those protective factors remain valid. Those protective orders, my apologies. Protective orders can also now be filed online at the New Hampshire Court's website, and people without internet access can contact their local crisis centers in order to try to be able to figure out how to access those filing possibilities. Emergency hearings are still being held for victims of domestic violence and stalking, and shelters are open and have an exemption from the governor in order to be able to offer safe housing or safe access safety for certain survivors who are not safe at home. Sexual assault examinations are happening, but advocates are not able to respond in person at this time due to COVID-19. However, they can be connected to an advocate telephonically. Certain CAC interviews are happening depending on the level of urgency. DCYF advocacy is still being offered, emergency shelter, and educational programs. So I don't know about the AZER team. That's just one of the general things that we participate in, but I don't know to what extent that's still in.
Yeah, and that's something I don't know either.
But all of the crisis centers, while it may look different, everybody's responding to their community's needs in their own way. But some are opening up chat functions as well for advocacy access. So there's a lot going on. And while the services may look different, they are still there. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and please help to make sure that your community is aware that there are these services available.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things actually that we are working on right now. We're hoping to start our support groups back up again virtually. So that's going to be something that's really great. And so there's lots of ways that we are trying to support the community. All of our services are free and confidential. And even though our offices are not open, quote unquote, right now, like they're locked, there are people that are available to help with anything that you need, whether it be restraining orders or stalking orders. All you have to do is call us. And most of all, just know that you always can call the 24-hour support line. This is the support line here for Bridges, which is really covers the greater Nashua and greater Milford area. But all of the crisis centers are doing wonderful work to support their communities. As you are doing wonderful work as well. Questions from anybody?
I think we've got a lot of shy people on the live stream. So no one has generated any questions last I looked, but I'm sure that there will be questions that pop up as people, I think they're likely processing a lot of this information. So I really appreciate that you've put your contact info on here, and hopefully people know that they can also reach out directly to our office, and we can connect with Jennifer and Amy Jo as well. And we'll continue to post resources that you all send. We'll definitely get that link to that awesome video up. And you can also find on our website, you can find links to the crisis centers as well. And that's an important thing to have. I would say I have it hanging in my office. I would highly recommend every educator just have it posted somewhere in their office, even if it's a home office right now, just having that number written down in case you need it would be really helpful.
And then just so you know, Ellen, the next slide, and will this all be posted on the website?
Sure.
Okay, so this is just a list of some resources that I thought were really great. And actually the DCOAF New Hampshire is the link that I actually included in the presentation. But there's a lot of wonderful resources out there. Another one that I found that I thought was great was it's called childmind.org. And there's some wonderful resources as well about mental health support and things that we can do for ourselves and for students and families.
Absolutely. We posted some of those, and we'll continue to post some of these as well. Okay,
awesome. Yes.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. It's wonderful to have folks who are out there in the field. We love partnering with you when we're not in remote work mode, but we really, it's nice to be able to do this virtually as well. And thank you so much for all the detail and time you put into that slideshow. I definitely will get that shared with folks on nhlearnsremotely.com. So folks who are looking for all those awesome prompts that you may want to consider, asking students and families some of those questions and fill in the blanks to get those conversations going. Definitely you'll be able to access that there shortly. We'll also upload this to YouTube. So by tomorrow morning, a copy of this should be loaded on our YouTube channel, which is NH Student Wellness. And so you'll be able to access it and share it there if you choose to do so. Thank you so much, ladies.
Great, thank you. And thank you to all the educators out there who are keeping the New Hampshire children safe.
Yeah. Ditto.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.